So thanks for listening. We have abundant time for question and answers until 10 minutes past 3. So here we have the 5 speakers. Who wants to start with the first question? John?
Hi, John Ennis from Goldman. I've got 2 actually. The first is on the Starbucks K-Cups business. I wondered if you could comment on the growth delivered by K-Cups relative to the rest of the Starbucks portfolio, and then maybe detail how the margin profile differs for Nestlé, i.e. does the K-Cups component, have a lower margin than the rest of the Starbucks portfolio because there's a higher degree of profit sharing? And then my second question is, when you go through the 3 presentations, the category growth for pet, I think was around 7, coffee was at 5, nutrition was at 3. So to fulfill the high growth criteria for nutrition, I guess you're baking in an element of share gains to get to above 4%. And I wondered if you could maybe outline the countries where you feel the most confident about that market share gain. It looks from the presentation that the US was one. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. On the question on K-Cup, the way the Starbucks business divides up is roughly 1/3 is out of home, 1/3 is K-Cup, and 1/3 is traditional roasting ground. So when we look at the Starbucks business we have, that's the sort of shape of the business. And K-Cup is an important part of that portfolio. The K-Cup, Starbucks' share of K-Cup is about 20% of that K-Cup system. And Starbucks continues to be a major driver of the K-Cup business. So it's an important business for us. It's about 1/3 of the business we've acquired. I'm not going to get into specifics on the margin, with all due respect, but it's an important part of the business, but it's not a disproportionate part of where we see the growth. So important, but not disproportionate, and we'll continue to drive all the elements of the business that we've bought going forward. And on the second question, could you just repeat the back end of the second question?
Was on category growth, or planning to gain market share.
Yeah.
Because category growth would be on average.
Correct. And that's
exactly. It was for the nutrition business, really.
Yeah. Okay.
That was
Thank you.
The category where growth was below 4%, so it was therefore implying market share gains.
Yeah, I will not joke because you remember, Marco, when we were 30 years ago in Italy, both Helmut Maurer came to the market and he made a comment at the time, and everyone was laughing, but not so much. It was, well, there are no mature markets, there are only mature managers, he used to say. So I don't want to be one of them. I'm convinced we have opportunities to win in many places, including China, just by going west, if you want. Today we are selling to something like 40,000 baby stores. We plan to go to 50,000 in the coming 18 months. Going west, going deep in the 2,300 cities where we can do business and where we have somewhere left some of our competitors not play alone, but not to focus. And in those parts, by the way, of China, birth rates are higher. So we can kill 2 pigeons with one stone. We have also a balanced footprint. When I talk India, where we are strong leaders, when I talk Brazil, when I talk Mexico, when I talk Philippines, when I talk Indonesia, we have strong powerhouses to continue to grow. And last but not least, the fact that we have a portfolio from maternal nutrition to baby food, like we have shown in China, where we are now growing very, very fast in China, we can play also on the duration in which consumers are entering into a category. So I'm convinced that yes, we'll have a sort of stabilization to 135 million babies a year, which probably is a good thing for the planet, but there are ways. We know that a Chinese consumer on average spends with one child as much as a French consumer with 2.4. So that means premiumization is an opportunity for us, and we have solutions, top-notch factories and great solutions to cater the needs of all those demanding consumers. So I'm convinced the category growth is one thing, but we have the means to win share in this category.
Okay, any other questions? Well, I see that Warren.
Hi. A question on China Baby. You said that you've got 3 brands, Illuma, S26 and Nan. On Illuma, can you tell us what share of the super premium part of the Chinese market you have? What kind of growth is that brand doing? Can that brand actually go outside of markets in China to other Asian countries? Just interested to know how far Illuma can go and what share it's already got. And then secondly, if I look at the other brands, S26 and Nan, if you strip out the growth of Illuma, it doesn't look like those other brands have been growing very fast. And I was just wondering whether you can maybe talk to us about S26 and Nan in China and whether those brands are growing or what your plans are to try and get them to grow. Thanks.
Yeah, so Illuma is the flagship, became the let's say, leading brand in the market with 74% distribution in the country. It's what we call super premium, so above 50 Swiss francs per kilo. It is, let's say, the number one brand of our portfolio, the showcase, and it has indeed grown faster than S26. We are in the middle of relaunch of S26 with our 2 pillars, Gold and Ultima. And what has happened somewhere, we tend to prioritize in the past Illuma only. Now we are back with a strong proposition on brain with S26, and we will push forward. These are the kind of categories where we were discussing means behind growth. Clearly, management has given us the means for the coming years to push those 2 brands forward simultaneously. Nan is a more specific proposition on hypoallergenic conditions and a bit less, let's say, mainstream. But even Nan has also plans to grow distribution in internal China. So I think, let's say, in the past we might have put too much emphasis on Illuma only. Now we have an allocation of resources that allows for growth on all the portfolio, as you have seen with the latest Nan communication, but also on S26 on brain development, and Illuma will continue to thrive for sure.
Any more questions, maybe on pet care?
Or not.
Well, I see that the sell side are actually having the monopoly of questions, but okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. Alain Oberhuber, Mainfest. I don't have a question on pet care, but on infant formula.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. But the question is regarding China and the indirect and direct sales. Obviously, you are mainly in China with direct sales, but how do you protect that on e-commerce your goods will be tracked by yourself and not by other wholesalers?
So first of all, you have to know that our share in e-commerce is superior to our share in offline. So that's important. We are category captain at Ali, so we are really highly engaged with our key e-commerce partners. So that's important that we win there. But what is important to understand for China is we are playing all cards in China. We have not all our eggs in one basket. We have 2 big factories where we produce locally. We have a brand like Illuma that is imported from Ireland, so exclusively from outside. We have baby food imported. We have baby food produced locally. So we have different feet, different pillars to build on. And I think it's wise in a country like China where, let's say, the regulatory framework is more and more difficult to have those different, let's say, possibilities to play. So we can win with different solutions. So we are not afraid. We are not only on e-commerce. We are not only on imported. We are not only on locally produced, but we are a local international player and recognized as such by our customers and the authorities. So I think we have a great advantage to play on all these different pillars, cards to win the game.
Towards the bottom. Yeah, go ahead. Nadim.
So this is a buy-side question, and it's on pet care. Maybe just talking about e-commerce. So this is Nadeem Risk at Fiera Capital. Just talking about e-commerce. Can you maybe comment on the margins? I know you won't maybe give specific numbers, but how do margins compare on the pet side between e-com and the traditional channels?
You know, right now, excuse me, trade spend is a little higher on the e-com side, right? And so versus brick and mortar, we're at a little bit of a disadvantage. I do expect that to level out over time. I think once we level the playing field between pure plays and click and collect, that will help. But at this point, there is a little bit of a disadvantage.
And this is a question of just the scale, to get the scale, or just a question of investing in e-com capabilities today?
This is a question of balance of power. And the pure plays have the balance of power right now.
Yes. Thank you.
Very precise answer. So, any more questions? We go back to the sell side, Selina.
Well, thank you. I'm afraid. So yeah. So I'll start with the pet care. 3 questions. So why is the growth going to accelerate globally? Second, you didn't mention pet health. Is this, I mean, I know in terms of nutrition, but going into more OTC type for pet, is it an area of interest and of growth? And then my third question was on D2C. How big that could be as an opportunity? Because I think you bought Tail.com, and could you elaborate a bit more of what you do in terms of D2C in pet? And then I have a few more questions on coffee and nutrition. Thank you.
So globally, I think what we're looking for is basically you see a lot of emerging markets. And as I kind of pointed out, excuse me, in China, where you have household penetration that's so low with pet ownership, and then Brazil, where what I call caloric coverage, commercial coverage, is still so low. I think we're seeing a lot of, one of the signposts for an emerging market is an emerging middle class. And we're seeing that more and more around the world, right? And we're also seeing our portfolio becoming sharper and sharper, and with the advantage of the digital world, et cetera, much more efficient and effective in terms of us getting there. So for me, in terms of true growth, right, I think you're going to see it that way. I think premiumization plays a really strong role in it. And I think if you look at some of the human food ideologies and how that's being translated into pet food, I think that's going to justify, right, some of this premiumization. I think as the human food ideologies continue to grow, consumers are going to be more aware and be more accepting, if you will, of a commercially prepared food. So I think that's a big one there. Okay, hit me with your next one. What was the next question?
It was about pet health, supplements or OTC products. Is that an area?
So we did not spend a lot of time talking about our veterinary business or our ProPlan veterinary diets. We have a very strong therapeutic diet business. I think Calming Care is a great example of, if you want to call that a supplement, it's really a sachet. I think it's of high interest to us. I think the veterinary channel in general is seeing a little bit of a resurgence, and we are going to actively participate in that growth. Relative to over-the-counter and things like that, I'm not sure that's something that would be our strong suit short term.
Last one was on D2C in pet health, in pet care, sorry. D2C, if you could elaborate.
So we have multiple platforms that I talked about already, which is Purina for Professionals, ProPlan Vet Direct, and our Purina store. We have a brand Just Right, which is direct to consumer, and we're partnering with our colleagues in Emina with Tails.com to determine how do we best bring personalized nutrition to the U.S. market. And we will be revamping and launching something near and dear here in the next few months.
Okay, Alan, go ahead.
Perfect.
Yes, I have 2 questions on coffee, one micro and one big picture. The micro one is, outside of the US, how do you expect your Starbucks sales to split between Nespresso, Dolce Gusto, and the roast and ground variants? And then my big picture question is, if I look at what you paid for Starbucks and I do an MPV of what the likely royalty payments are going to be over the next X number of years, I mean, that's a lot of money. And I guess my question is, how much consideration did you give to building rather than buying, and rolling out and creating or using an existing brand to take those to exploit that opportunity that you see Starbucks filling? Thank you.
Okay. Well, let me start with the macro, and we'll move back to the micro. The question of build or buy, I think when you look at the portfolio that we now have with Nescafé, Nespresso and Starbucks, you can see they're very complementary brand propositions. Nescafé has a unique role within our coffee portfolio. Nespresso has. Starbucks is really, really incremental in terms of its reach, in terms of its brand values, and in terms of the sorts of places you can take that brand. So would it have been possible for us to create a Nescafé version of Starbucks? Honestly, probably not, because it starts from the coffee shop and allows us to bring the coffee shop in home. So I think in terms of make or buy, this was one where the perpetual license that we have, and remember it's perpetual, so this is a forever deal. We're going to have this brand and develop this brand for forever, was the right move to allow us to complete that portfolio of the 3 leading global brands. So that's my answer to the first point. On the micro point, we really see, especially initially with the launch of these 3 products, that the Nespresso and the Nescafé Dolce Gusto platforms outside of the US are where we're going to see the majority of the volume and the majority of the growth. There will be business to be had in roast and ground and whole bean in that first tranche. We will definitely be launching that across the world. But if you're looking to see where the majority of the growth will come from, it's going to be on those capsule platforms in the first tranche of launch. Maybe just, it's a question you haven't asked, but just to finish on that notion of we have 24 products launched today, we're already working on the next level of innovation to see where we can take that Starbucks brand in the future onto other platforms. So we see this as the beginning of a portfolio, certainly not the end. So there's many more places we can take that Starbucks proposition.
Eileen, your turn.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Great. So I thought I'd ask more questions on pet, just to round things up a bit.
Yes.
So the first one is on Merrick. It's clearly a great brand. I was wondering what the plans are in terms of expanding maybe outside the specialty channel, maybe even outside the US, and also more broadly, what the percentage of your sales is now in the US market that's from the premium segment. Because I think you've underperformed the category in the last few years, maybe because of under-indexing in that segment. So that's the first question. And then the second one, in the annual report, I noticed that the pet care margin for Americas was expected to decline in the medium to long term. I don't know if that's correct. If that's the case, sort of why that is?
Not according to my boss.
Okay.
So the Merrick question, in terms of expansion on Merrick, I mean, we've been a little capacity restricted. And we have a massive capital job going on in Hereford, Texas right now that will give us both wet and dry capacity for future growth. I think what we just saw in the past couple of months, we expanded into PetSmart. Right? I think you're going to see an acceleration on e-commerce. We have no plans to cross channel with that brand. And again, this comes back to our consumer segmentation. And our consumer segmentation is so tightly defined and really gets to how we optimize brands and products to consumers. We don't need to take Merrick, cross channel. The other expansion you talk about international, right now we're in some test stores in Mexico with Petco. As a global steering committee, we're looking very hard at what some of those expansion opportunities might be. I think now that we're in a position where we have the capacity to support that demand, more of those things will be considered.
You can do premium.
Go premium.
Okay, I'll do premium. So I mentioned in the presentation that for us, the premium business represents about a third of our business, whereas it's about 25% of the category. And we have had declines in there in the past. The good news is when you look at that in the first quarter, we've increased our sales. And we believe that's because increasing the relevancy of our core is starting to pay off. And so we expect those trends to turn as we move into the rest of this year. Margin.
There's no deterioration of margin that I'm aware of. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can follow up later on that specific question. Jimmy.
It's Jamie Eisenwater from Ash Park. A question on nutrition and one on coffee as well. Does the baby nest business still exist? And if so, would that not have a big opportunity in China given the premiumization of that market? And on the coffee side of things, what sort of interaction do you have with Starbucks on that side of the business now? Do they have to approve products? Do they have veto rights on new launches? Can you just describe how that process works? Thanks.
So on the babiness, I think you are right. We have actually decided last year to focus on China. So today, this business is limited to China only, where, as we know, let's say the proportion of parents that are ready to pay for a certain amount of money for their children, and also really looking for personalized solutions. So the Chinese market, with 24% of parents that we consider, in our terminology, people that don't make compromise, compared to what you would have in an average of the world, 19%. So higher proportion of people that are what we call uncompromising pioneers. So they relate to the babiness brand very well. But it's a limited business for the moment, especially in the only big cities, Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong. We want to, let's say, make sure the model is sustainable and is very robust before any decision of expanding that. So we really still have work to do, but I agree with you. It was necessary to focus where really consumers resonate with that proposition.
Thank you. And on the Starbucks relationship, the first thing is, as we set out on this relationship, we saw it very much as a partnership. This is a brand that we have forever, so it's in our interest as well as Starbucks' interest to make sure that this brand continues to grow, be a premium brand, and add value. So very concretely, we have established a brand board. We meet CEO to CEO at least once a year. We meet the management of the Starbucks business at least once a quarter, and we sit down and discuss our plans, their plans, and understand how we can amplify the joint businesses together. So it really is a business of partnership. And one of the reasons we were able to move so quickly was that ourselves and Starbucks sat down and agreed that we were going to qualify these 24 products, which are Starbucks recipes and Starbucks flavors. They're not our flavors put with a Starbucks brand, they're Starbucks coffees that we have developed with Starbucks. We sat down and agreed on those 24 products over a sort of 4 to 5 week period. So the partnership is really strong, and it's in the interest of driving that brand for the long term through premiumization, adding value, and getting the best for those businesses.
We still have time for one. Guillaume, yeah.
Thank you. One more question on Chinese nutrition, I'm afraid. On your Going West strategy, I wonder what are the implications from a mix and margin standpoint, because as you're expanding into tier 2, 3 cities, you're probably looking at population with lower disposable income. So do you think you've got the right product offering in place at the moment? And what could be the incremental costs associated with that in terms of, be it nutritional consultants or infrastructures? I mean, in other words, how are you planning on balancing organic growth and continued growth and operating margin expansion?
So first of all, going west doesn't mean that you go cheap. The reality of the market is that, in fact, some Chinese companies have super premium products in the West. Okay. What has changed is we have really engaged with our B2B partners, Ali, JD, etc., to find ways of reaching those additional 10,000 baby stores with a new route to market, if you want, with the right, let's say, supply chain setup, and without sacrificing margins. And we have the brands and sub-brands, I would say, to attack that part of the market. So no sacrifice on margin, just innovation into the way we go there.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we can conclude the Q&A session, and I open the break.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.